on metabolism. When we say metabolism, this is the sum total of all chemical reactions occurring in the body. So this has two types. You have the catabolism and the anabolism. When we say catabolism, this is a breaking process. So this involves breakdown. So you have examples. You have cellular respiration. So there is breakdown of this, which will be our topic after this. And then we have digestion. That is also breaking of our food for an end product. So that is an example of breakdown process, catabolism. Now we also have anabolism. Anabolism refers to the synthesis or formation. So this is a building up process occurring in our body. So if this is breakdown, this is building up. This is the opposite. Here, there is breaking. Here, there is building. You see? So, we have some examples like photosynthesis. You have the word synthesis means formation of food or glucose in the presence of light, or through the energy present in the light. Then we have synthesis of protein. So protein synthesis. So there is formation of protein out of our raw materials, amino acids. Whether it's present in our diet or some are being formed in our body. So we have essential and non-essential amino acids. Those are, so we say essential, they have to be present in the food. And they are used as raw materials for photosynthesis. They have to be present in the diet. When we say non-essential, that doesn't mean that they are not needed. They are needed as raw materials also for protein synthesis, but our body can synthesize them. So they may not be present in our diet. So all, however, are raw materials for protein synthesis. Okay, now let's have one example, discuss one example of this catabolism. So we have cellular respiration. Now cellular respiration occurs in mitochondria. This is for aerobic respiration. You say aerobic, meaning with the presence of oxygen. So with the presence of oxygen. This occurs in mitochondria or mitochondrion. This is now the picture of the mitochondrion. It's still a double membrane structure, the outer membrane, the inner membrane, and the inner membrane forms a continuation. Inside, we call these foldings as the cristae, and the space here is called the matrix. So you take note again of this structure because they are very important for cellular respiration. So we have here the cellular respiration. Now what are the raw materials for cellular respiration? Now generally this requires, we have glucose C6H12O6 plus oxygen, we need that. So more or less, the end products of photosynthesis are the raw materials for cellular respiration. That one is oxygen. This is aerobic. And this will give, of course, energy in the form of ATP, plus we have the release, the end product, carbon dioxide. So this is now the energy currency of the cell. And this is carbon dioxide, which is said to be exuded out of our body. So they are one of the waste products. And they have to be exuded out of the body because the plants will use them again for photosynthesis. So there will be what? Oxygen. So that is how cycle occurs. Okay. So as you look at here, the glucose and the oxygen are the end products of photosynthesis, which are used as raw materials for cellular respiration. And the end products, you have energy. So out of this food, there is energy in the form of ATP and the waste product, carbon dioxide, which has to be taken out from our body because they are wastes. So class, carbon dioxide is a waste product. So they are said to be waste and they have to be swept out from our body. So that is done through exhalation. God gets rid of this waste product because this can intoxicate our cells if too much of its concentration. Sad to say that men take carbon dioxide in the form of carbonated drinks. What are carbonated drinks? These are, aning nasa may mga, these are drinks, ang juice, ang good juice, ang Welch, butangan ng carbon dioxide, dissolved in it, ay mo ng carbonated drinks, anahin mo na siyang may. Imbis na Welch lang ta siya, na walay carbon, butangan o bad, butangan siya waste. So, carbonated. Now, there are other carbonated drinks which you like, of course. And the body doesn't the body doesn't like that carbon dioxide in your drinks, the carbonated drinks. So, if possible, you drink the fresh juice. Or maybe kanang Welch or Oxford without carbon dioxide. Because carbon dioxide is waste. They have to be removed from the body so that our cells will not be intoxicated. Para dili mahilo. Because they are poison. Okay? Now, what are the steps in cellular respiration? Yes. Glycolysis, Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. I'm just giving you the summary of because it's a very long process. Now, glycolysis occurs in the cytosol. What is a cytosol? Cytosol is the fluid part of the cytoplasm. The fluid part, can you still remember? The fluid part of the cytoplasm. Now, glycolysis is actually the breakdown of glucose to pyruvate molecules. So, we have the end products, pyruvate molecules. So, the raw materials, glucose, plus of course the oxygen. So, there is a need for the oxygenated, for glycolysis, this is anaerobic. There is no need of oxygen here. It is anaerobic. This occurs in the cytosol. So, it can give you a net of 2 molecules of pyruvate. And of course, 2 molecules of the NADH. Now, these NADH are useful for electron transport chain because this could still generate ATP. So, this NADH would be brought to the cristae for electron transport chain. How about the pyruvate molecules? Now, these 2 molecules of pyruvate will be brought to the matrix for Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. Okay? Now, of course, this also yields 2 ATP molecules. So, out of glycolysis, this gives you, of course, this requires at first 2 ATP molecules, and then that gives 4 ATP molecules minus 2 that have been used. Kani ang expense. Ang gross ATP production is 4. Nanong na 2 na lang because gi-minusan aning expense. So, nahimo na lang siyang 2 ATP molecules. Plus, of course, the end product, 2 molecules of the NADH, which should be brought to the cristae for ATC or electron transport chain. So, we have now a net yield of ATP in glycolysis alone is only 2 ATP class. This does not require energy, oxygen. If for every molecule of glucose, if there is no oxygen, it can give you only 2 ATP molecules. compared with the presence of oxygen, it can give you a net of 36 ATP. That is how important oxygen is. No? That's why. Say if you have COVID and then your oxygen saturation is going very, very low, what does it imply? Meaning your cells are what? They are hungry of this oxygen. There is inadequate supply of oxygen in your cells, which will do this cellular respiration. So, very tiresome for the cells. That's why, if dili ka oxygen, then you have COVID and you have very low oxygen saturation. You know, the minimum is 95. No, the 95 ang oxygen saturation sa inyong oximeter. But if you go below that, say naabot nag 80 plus, or say naabot na nag 80, 82, sabot 70, 79, 78 na, you will be intubated. Ginhawa na mo diri sa inyong liog, sa inyong ilong. No? So, that is how it will be done. That is how important oxygen is. And that is also the reason why you have to take care of your body. So you will be protected from this COVID infection. Because that COVID virus could decrease your oxygen supply. Why? Because its main target is the respiratory, especially the lungs. And the lungs is the one that will stock temporarily the oxygen that is needed by our body. And because the lung is no longer functioning very well because it's being destroyed by the virus, then the oxygen supply of the body available for the cells will be decreased. And there is danger class. If the oxygen saturation goes down, so you will die of cardiac arrest. Muna din na mag-comatose. Matumba na lang mo, tingala mo na tumba, then diretsyo, patay. Okay, why? Because of inadequate supply of oxygen. So here, we have with the presence of oxygen. Kani siya oxygenated with oxygen. This one is with oxygen. So that is this one aerobic, this one aerobic, anaerobic. Okay? Now, so here in the Krebs cycle, what are those molecules that are brought in the matrix? You have the two molecules of pyruvate. Where you can find the matrix? So now here you have the matrix. You have the matrix. So here in the matrix, this is where Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle occurs. This is good for one molecule of pyruvate. Whatever products here, that will be multiplied by 2. Why? Because there are two molecules of pyruvate. So whatever products, that will be multiplied by 2. Okay, so this is good for one molecule of pyruvate. This enters the Krebs cycle. Now, how many NADH were produced? 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 NADH produced. Okay? Pila ka FADH? So what is this NADH? Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. These are electron acceptors. Electron carriers. So you have the H here is the source of our electron. This is the source of our electron. So you have NADH. How about this FADH2? Flavine adenine dinucleotide. For one molecule of FAD that accepts 2 molecules of electrons or 2 molecules of hydrogen. So you have 2 electrons here trapped by the FAD. So overall, we have the overall process produces for every molecule of pyruvate 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 4. Okay? So since there are 2 molecules of pyruvate, so we are multiplying it by 2. So the overall has 8 NADH molecules for Krebs cycle. Now, these 8 NADH molecules would be brought again to the cristae for electron transport chain. So, unsa na nga mga NADH? Kani nga NADH from the cytosol to the cristae and from the matrix out of the citric acid cycle to the cristae. So, that will undergo electron transport chain. Now, another, we have the FADH2. Pila ka buok? Isa lang ka FADH2 times 1. Isa ka FADH2 times 2. Kaya duha man ka pyruvate. So, there are 2 FADH2 that would be brought also to the cristae for electron transport chain. Now, how about for this ATP? So, kaning ATP produced in the Krebs cycle, so as in glycolysis, pwede na magamit sa cell. That can be used right away. No? So, we have here 2 ATP molecules. So, these are the end products of Krebs cycle. 8 NADH, 2 FADH2, 2 molecules of ATP. This NADH and the FADH2 would be brought to the cristae for electron transfer chain. And then we have the 2 available ATP from Krebs cycle. Okay, here, the third step. Now, this electron transfer chain occurs in the cristae, kaning folds din. No? This is the continuation of the inner membrane, kaning folds. Now, what happened here? Now, kaning NADH o FADH2 mo undergo ni siya oxidation reduction reaction. What is this reaction? This is accepting and giving off of electrons. When we say reduction, that is gaining or accepting of electrons. When we say oxidation, giving off of electrons. And that is what happened in electron transport chain. So this involves a lot of electron carriers. No? So many electron carriers involved. When you say electron carriers, mo hatag, then mo receive, ihatag na sab, receive, hatag. Okay, oxidation, reaction. Okay? Now, what happened? So the overall result of this electron transport chain, but of course, there is what we call as oxygen. No? Napagilay products, no? Kaning oxygen. So this is another product out of electron transport chain. Oxygen plus, oxygen is one of the electron acceptors of this electron transfer chain. So, this gives you water. So, asa ni siya gikan? This comes from the electrons nga na-produce out of the oxidation reduction of this NADH and the FADH2 plus the last acceptor of electron, oxygen. Asa ni gikan yung oxygen? Kani atong inhale. No? Okay. So, once ang oxygen, dawato na niya ang electron. Siya ang last acceptor sa electron. This gives you water. So, as a result, naatay, plus H2O. So, this is water. Okay? Now, so here, sa electron transfer chain, every NADH, pila kabuok ang idala na NADH? Sa Krebs cycle na ay 8 kabuok. Sa glycolysis na ay 2 kabuok. Now, so, for every NADH, no? For every NADH class, it can generate 3 ATP molecules. Pag break ana sa NADH, so it pass through oxidation, reduction, reaction, it releases or it generates 3 ATP. Now, kanyang 3 ATP class, muna po na ato i-multiply sa NADH na na-generate sa glycolysis of Krebs cycle. That's why, i-multiply na to ang NADH diri times 3. Okay? Times 3. And then, so, 2 times 3 equals 6. Now, nganong gimayusan og 2? Now, kaning 2 diri mo ni ang 2 ATP nga gigamit pamasahe or expense pag-transport sa NADH paingon sa crispate. It requires 2 ATP. No? Na siya expense. It's a long travel. And molecules require 2 ATP. Molecules for every glucose or for every NADH nga dalhon paingon sa crispate. So, since there are 2 NADH molecules that were brought to the crispate during glycolysis, so that is minus 2 ATP. So, 2 NADH, say every NADH requires 1 ATP times 2. So, there are 2 ATP. So, gimayusan na ko ang iyang product ug 2. That is pamasahe. No? Expense. So, ang result ana for every 6 molecules of ATP out of 2 NADH minus the expense, kay nakautang man siya during transport. So, this could generate a net of 4 ATP sa glycolysis. Now, sa Krebs cycle, there were 8 NADH produced. Now, times 3, no, for every NADH, it yields 3 ATP. So, it produces sa Krebs cycle 24 ATP. Okay? How about sa FADH2? Pila yan ma-generate? Sa every molecule, it can give you 2 ATP. Now, here, sa Krebs cycle, pila ka buok FADH2? Duha. I-times 2 ni mo dire, kay 2 man ni, ang na-generate sa electron transport chain times 2, so naatay 4 ATP. Atong i-total tanan. Oh? So, 4 plus 2 equals 6. 6 plus 24 equals 30. 30 plus 4, 34. 34 plus 2 equals 36 ATP molecules. This is now the net ATP yield or yielded per glucose molecule. See? So that is how it was done. Okay? So, remember, this is done with the presence of oxygen. This is done with the presence of oxygen. Now, class, what if there is no oxygen? Can I erase? Pwede na? This one?
Oo.
What if there is no oxygen? Oh. Now, if there is no oxygen, class, the NADP here, or the the NADH, or the NADH produced there, would undergo anaerobic respiration. So, what are these anaerobic? Meaning without oxygen. So, we have here 2 types of anaerobic respiration. So, you call that anaerobic as fermentation. Then we have this alcoholic fermentation, and you have the lactic acid fermentation. Now here in the alcoholic fermentation, then here the NADH is converted into ethanol. NADH is converted into ethanol plus carbon dioxide. And then this one, ang NADH is converted into lactic acid. Okay. So, without the presence of oxygen plus, now the cell, say after it passed through glycolysis, it cannot proceed to Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. Say if your body, if you have COVID, you have very low oxygen saturation. So after glycolysis, your body would go for lactic acid fermentation. Oh. Where ang NADH, instead of bringing it to electron transport chain, now this will be broken to form lactic acid. And this will result to muscle pain. Uni nahitabo sa COVID. Nganong nagka-muscle pains man? Kay grabe ang lactic acid formation. Why? Because the cell is deficient of oxygen. So, pwede siya mo create of muscle pain. So, what causes muscle pain? Because of this lactic acid formation. Now, the same is true when you do some strenuous activities like exercise, mountain climbing. Diba? When you go up on top of the mountain, the oxygen that would be available for ingestion will become less. Why? Because there would be decreased atmospheric pressure at higher elevation. The oxygen supplies are very many. There is abundant supply of oxygen in the atmosphere. However, the atmospheric pressure when you go up on top of the mountain will be decreased. So the result is, it would be very hard for the oxygen to enter into our lungs because of decreased atmospheric pressure. So the result is less oxygen in our lungs, and the cell, instead of say after going for glycolysis, instead na mo go for Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, since they lack oxygen, so they go for lactic acid fermentation. So muna pag human og kat-kat sa bukid, pag human og aerobics, or sana kanang magsayaw-sayaw, exercise, zumba, pamaol dayon. Pamaol. Because of inadequate supply of oxygen, or say because of strenuous activities. Now, here, how about this? Alcoholic fermentation. Now, kaning alcoholic fermentation usually is observed in yeasts. Kanang patubo. Patubo. Now, ang nahitabuan na, ang NADH, i-convert niya into ethanol. Ethanol, then of course, it releases carbon dioxide. So, ang nahitabo karon pag masa nimo, gibutang nimo ang imuhang diluted nga yeast. Katong yeast solution nimo, gibutang nimo sa imong flour, naghimo kang dough. Now, what causes the dough to rise is your carbon dioxide. So, pagbutang nimo sa oven, of course, nangamatay ang yeasts. And the carbon dioxide goes out. Ang nabilin, spaces. So, dako kay mong bread, pero usahay makita nimo dagko kay buho. Grabe ang tubo. Grabe ang carbon dioxide production nga, dugay nimo gipatubo. So, the more you let it stay there for a longer time, it produces more of this carbon dioxide than the ethanol. So, the result is, you are creating more holes. Dako lagi kay mong bread. Pag paak nimo puro hangin. Dako po kay buho. Okay? So, what causes the dough to rise is your carbon dioxide, and that beer smell, that alcohol smell in the bread or in the yeast is the ethanol. Ethanol. Okay? So, that ends our topic. So, hope you can understand this chapter.